OK， 开始。
Hello, everyone. All of you know this is a pre-recording because I told you in the previous section. So continue, we are going to discuss compassion, this word, and the ideas from the scientific research. So I won't give you a detail of how to cultivate compassion because all of us, we know that, but I just want to emphasizing the proof or the evidence where the compassion originates. So in these slides, you can see the brain and a heart or our mind. So I would like to entitle this a trained brain can change our mind. How is that? So I'm going to talk about that in 40 or 45 minutes. So let's take a look of the general definition of compassion. It says compassion, of course, is a kind emotion and regarded of having sensitivity, and that kind of sensitivity will bring us to feel the other's suffering. So that's the definition of compassion. And also compassion can motivate us to go out of others' way and have the reaction or behavior to help others. So it says compassion motivates people to go out of their way to help the physical, mental, or emotional pains of others and themselves. And of course, compassion means not only to feel or to take pity on people who are suffering, but to suffer with them. And it includes a spontaneous desire to alleviate the suffering. So right now we have the general definition of compassion. And of course, I just said I'm not going to make emphasis of how we cultivate our compassion, but only it's in a very rational reason or rational research about the compassion. Since we all know compassion is very important, it's a long-term value for people's survival and growth. If we don't have compassion, being a human being, then actually we cannot alleviate ourselves from the suffering. Just because we have the emotion of compassion so that we can help others, we can take actions to help others. So in Buddhism, the Master Xing Yun said, the mind of compassion is the ever-flowing fountainhead for all living beings, because compassion is one part of our Buddha nature. And compassion is the basic quality of being human. You know, that's support one view from the scientific research. We will learn about that later. And also, one can be without everything, but still have compassion. And in the writing, Master Xing Yun also said, only compassion can restore peace and harmony amidst conflict. So we talked about to have the world peace and the world harmony. And our Master Xing Yun said about 5 points about have harmony. If we have compassion, then of course we need to do something about ourselves. So he said, harmony within ourselves is very important. We have a balanced body and mind. And of course, harmony within family, because family is the support of our life. And also harmony with the society, and harmony with others, and harmony, of course, with the wider world. So if we have compassion, and this compassion is one part of our Buddha nature, which means we all possess compassion, even though we say we need to cultivate more, but basically compassion exists in our brain. That's why I said a trained mind can change a trained brain, actually. A trained brain can change our mind. So why we have a meditation practice, and we can make it a schedule as our daily practice, because we need to activate our compassion in our self-awareness and our consciousness, because compassion really originated from one corner of our brain. So that's I'm going to talk. So let's take a look about the scientist said. Okay, that's our brain. Of course, I look for in Google, I need some colorful example. So I collect this too. Actually, before I do the research, I really don't know that our emotion and our behavior is from these parts of our brain. So let's take a look of the insular cortex. And more detail is anterior insular cortex. And it was in 1809, a person, a doctor named Johnson Christian Real, he found the insula. He found the position of insular cortex. When he found these, the discover the position of the brain, but in that time, without any MRI, he couldn't do more detailed research about the function of insular cortex. So he knew that it's a region, the place of insular cortex is very hard to see. It's not visible from the surface review. So after that, for 2 centuries, all the doctors and scientists, they try to use the modern technology to find out or to give a test or to have MRI. So they found out that even though it located very deep within the lateral, that's what they say, lateral circus of the brain. Lateral, that means one side of our brain, and deep down. It's a very deep, so it's very hard to see. And through the modern technology and modern devices, medical devices, recently they found out the insular cortex has very important functions. And that's what I took the words from the research. It says the insular cortex becomes active when we experience bodily sensation. Remember when we take meditation, one method, the basic method is we know or we bring out the sensational feeling. So when we experience bodily sensation or when we viewing some body's experience in other people, maybe from their the faces, or they told you their experience, and the insular cortex will activate the empathy, will activate the feeling, the common feeling. So this is why when we look at a picture of a painful event or some story even, we hear, we see, and we see the image of a painful event and we feel the pain as we look at the picture or as we hearing about the story. And it gives us the feeling that we were the one who experienced the sensation, or we are the one who experiencing the suffering. So that's the insular cortex bring us. And it says also the insular cortex can respond to other joyful feelings. So with the function of our insular cortex, we can feel others' feelings. And at the same time, we can feel others' joyful feelings. So we can say that even though these insular cortex is the size is not big, it says if the size as just as small as a plume size, and it hide deep down in our side in part of frontal lobe. And it was discovered 2 centuries ago. But only in recently, the scientists, by means of the technology, using the modern technology and the MRI, they can really find the place and really can learn more about the structure and about the functions of these insular cortex. So you can see here, these is a pictorial. So if you have any emotion, even you enjoying music, it's all from these, the small part of our brain, insular cortex. So where is insular cortex? And you can see these pictures. Here, that's insular row, and the insular cortex is like the outskirt of these little part of brain. Okay, and that's the insular cortex. But especially there's the area around the insular lobe, these area. Let's take a look. Oh, here, that's the front anterior part of insular cortex, especially these area that our empathy or our compassion or what you call the loving kindness originates. So when people suffer, you have the feeling of suffering. If you see a child smiling, a child's giggling, child's laughter, and you feel joyful. See, that's where they comes from. Okay, now let's back to the history. In 1807, I'm saying 1809, Dr. Real, he found the position of the insular cortex. But you see, after 200 years, 2012, these international group from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, they define and they really see the effect of anterior insular cortex. And this team is an international team. At that time, they worked together in Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. And I did the research. Even now, in 2021, they still emphasizing doing the research of anterior insular cortex, and they found out more. So we can see that if we know if we take meditation and we have the feeling of sensational, and of course, the next stop, that's we can train or we can calm our mind, our brain, actually, our anterior insular cortex. Calm our anterior insular cortex, then we can develop more about our self-awareness, about our self-esteem, and about our confidence. So why am I talking about these? I think that's very interesting for us to know. We do have compassion. Everyone has compassion. But for meditator, we can develop more because we know where our consciousness are. We know from the sensational feeling, we can observe more subtle. We can observe more details about ourselves. Knowing well about ourselves, then we know others' feeling because we have compassion. The compassion makes us to feel with others. So in this research, the international group, they found out, and the title is Anterior Insular Cortex is Necessary for Empathic Pain Perception. Actually, at the first time, they wanted to find out what's wrong with people who have autism, what's wrong with the people who have a drug addiction, and they found out the malfunction of anterior insular cortex can have that happen. So first time in the beginning, they have the view of helping people who have addiction problems. But we can, as a meditator, practitioners, we can take a look of these and we find out the proof in scientific view. And also we can learn more about ourselves. Okay, and the abstract it says empathy refers to the ability to perceive and share others people's affective state. So much imaging evidence just through MRI suggests that observing others' suffering and pain elicits activations of the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortices associated with subjective empathetic responses in the observer. So we can not only to feel, but subjectively we have response and with continuous behavior to help. So with these area, anterior insular cortex, then we can help. We not only feel, but we do to help others. So that's the scientific evidence. Okay. So let's have more detail about anterior insular cortex. So I just show you where is the anterior, the cortex is in these areas. So all our feeling, when we ask people, how do you feel today? Or how do you feel now? Actually, is the activity doing in our anterior insular cortex. So the initial for anterior insular cortex, AIC, it says is implicated in a wide range of conditions and behaviors. Even though it's not function itself, it's just like a group work. The insular actually is like a receiver. He received a lot of motions and also a lot of experiences from our sensational feeling. And it's like the center of collecting all the emotions from our sensational feelings, and then it can be developed into a feeling or an emotion. So when we say, how do you feel? Or how do you think? Or how? Actually, how is working in this area because we have the feeling, we have the experiences, we have the feeling, and we have behaviors. So it says it includes all the like lust, our craving, our desire, and our the feeling of happiness and our love, and even to our decision making. And take a look, a sudden insight. So I think that's very interesting to know this area. Even though we are not doctors, we are not brain doctors, but I think when we observe, usually you will hear the word observe ourselves, scan ourselves, or we have a lot of thoughts when we taking meditation at the first beginning practice. So where all those things come? Where all those all those flying thoughts from? Now we know it's from our anterior insular cortex. So once again, it says, is all the feelings originates, including our loving kindness, our empathy, our sympathy, for all you can call. But the most important thing is that we know that, and we can make expansion to our capability by way of taking meditation. We can have more subtle and become a sharp experience about ourselves, including the sensational feeling, including our mental process. So if we can have more meditation, then we can learn more about ourselves. Not only the feeling of empathy, but also we can do more things to help. And of course, according to the scientists' research, they emphasizing how it works. They emphasizing what's the result. So it says here, the conclusion is that the anterior insular cortex is where the feeling or emotion of empathy originates, and is thought to play a crucial role in emotional experience and generate subjective feelings that can bring about actions. So I think that's very important for us to know. So when we have a desire or when we have a craving, actually we can tell ourselves, calm down. This is illusion, because that's the working process from our anterior insular cortex. So when you tell yourself like this, I think you will calm down your emotional thinking, or you can calm down your flying thoughts, because it's all the works from the anterior insular cortex. And there is one factors, the sociologists, they will say, what's the difference between human or developed mammal with the lower level of animals? So it says here, new finding suggests a fundamental role for the AIC, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but the short form is VEN. What is VEN? VEN is a kind of nerve cells. It connects to the cortex, and it transports, just like the cars transport all the feelings, the emotions, and or the subjective feelings, and make them into actions. So according to the researchers, they said VEN, von abnormal neurons, plays a very important role, because it, in the cells, when it works, then our AIC is active. When our AIC is active, then we feel very aware. we are aware and we are in certain consciousness. I think that's, and they found out the only human or apes or whales, dolphins, or maybe they said, maybe elephant, they have much numbers of VEN than the other animals. So, which means for human, we have more numbers of VEN in our insular cortex. That's why human beings in nature, they like to help each other. Just like the ape, they live as a group and they help each other. So that's the big difference of the well-developed mankind's mind to the other kinds of animals. I think that's the most outstanding point or distinguished point between human being and other animals. So the conclusion, just we know that if we can train our mind and our behavior will be affected, and we can really cultivate our brain and our mind to have more compassion, to have more empathy to others. That's why they said one of the many benefits for meditation is we found ourselves more kind and more considering and more compassionate to others. Of course, we all know meditations help us to get rid of stress. We feel more relaxed, but actually, when we take meditation practice, we can have more compassion in our brain or in our mind. Okay, so I just want to share you with this, not very specific or very scientific view, but I think it's very interesting. So I want to share with you. Okay, so what happened if our interior insular cortex become malfunction? And that's the answer. When they said that's anterior insular cortex dysfunction, when our brain, or specifically said, when our insular cortex become malfunction, what will happen? So right now, a lot of disorders, I think we all know. And we have swimming mood, right? That's mood disorder. And we have the phobia, that's panic disorder. And of course, PTSD, that's the term we right now in this modern era, we always heard about that. And of course, obsessive compulsive disorder, and even eating disorders. And of course, schizophrenia. It's very hard to pronounce this, but schizophrenia. So when we have something wrong about our anterior insular cortex, then we might have these disorder symptoms. And that's from a scientific way of we found out our brain, and the brain affect our mind. So that's one thing I think is good. It's beneficial for us when we take meditation. Then we know a little about our brain. Is very helpful to us, okay? And also helpful to others, because we know some people don't they they don't have the strong intention to offend you, but maybe they cannot help with things themselves, because you can just forgive them, because sometimes they have maybe a little kind of disorders. Okay, so we can become more compassionate once we realize the um, the, uh, the the working process of anterior insular cortex. Then we will understand more about people's behavior. Okay, but what about us? We can expand our compassionate capacity. So we can train ourselves, since mind or brain can be trained. Then we use some ways to expand our compassion capacity. So we can start within ourselves to make ourselves more harmonious. So we can treat ourselves as we are going to treat our friend. That's because you and I, we are all equal. And of course, we don't confine ourselves in one corner. We reach out to others. When we sit, when we meditate, it's a kind of confronting ourselves, but that's for more practice to calm our mind down. But after the meditation, we cultivate more compassion and wisdom, then we can reach out to others and try to help others in their suffering. And of course, we also try not to judge quickly others. And we say encouraging words. That's what the verbal master Xing Yun taught us. Say good words, have good thoughts, right? Do good things. So we can do all these very little things in our daily life. And of course, keep practicing meditation, or keep practicing mindfulness practice, and try informal compassion practices. When we say informal, that's we need some ways, some technical, some skills, or maybe even some classes if you don't think you are compassionate enough. But informal compassion practices, you can go Google and you can find, wow, there are so many classes talking about compassion. So we need some skills. And of course, we do volunteering service for our community, or for school, or even for the temple. And we learn how to advocate the good or a kindness thinking, the 3 good deeds. I think all of us, we are good people. And our brain and our mind needed to be cultivated or trained so that the world harmony can be achieved. And then I think that's very important. And we don't lose hope for these practices. Okay. Now, last conclusion. We are dreamers, but there are many unfulfilled dreams in this world. That's what our master said. And when we practice compassion, we sometimes come up short ourselves. But no matter what the situation is, our compassion can create the affinity needed to succeed in any endeavor. So compassion is truly the inexhaustible treasure of life. So we can train ourselves to be more compassionate by practicing meditation. Okay? So we will see you the next time. Hope you have a very good and happy weekend. And thank you. And I'll see you next time. Until then, keep safe and keep healthy. Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.